Speaking of gorgeous sprite work, I finally got the chance to play a game that I have had my eye on for like forever, it feels like, and just finally just pulled the trigger and bought and played on Steam. It's called Touhou Luna Nights. It is a Touhou spin-off, spin-off game, fan game thing. Touhou has a very funny relationship with fan games because as long as you... Basically, the policy that Zun laid out, the creator of Touhou, is that, like, well, as long as you say it's unofficial or that you make it clear that it's a fan game, then not a problem. And that's why there is so much Touhou fan stuff. Did it just go on sale 2 days after I bought it for full price? Are you fucking kidding me? God damn it. I feel so... That's like I'm never gonna buy a game full price again now. Well, ignoring that, Touhou Luna Nights is a really cool game. It came out in 2019. It is... I hate saying this word. I hate saying it. I'm going to say it, but I don't want to. It is a Touhou Metroidvania. I had like a whole podcast about why I hate the term Metroidvania, but that's like what it is. It is a Symphony of the Night style game set in the Touhou universe. If you don't know anything about Touhou, you really don't need to. It is a series of I realized that I never even introduced what that is. Touhou is a series of indie bullet hell shoot 'em ups that are all created by this guy named Zun, Z-U-N, and they're all just kind of about girls in big frumpy outfits and hats shooting fairies. You would think that because it has like 1 billion characters and stuff, and 1,000 different fan works, it would have some like super complex lore. And the reality is that like the plot of every game is the simplest thing ever. And it's really just that people like the characters. I like Touhou a lot. I've played quite a few Touhou games in the past. And Luna Nights uses the cast of Touhou 6. So every game in the series kind of like, it's like a whole new slew. Typically, like the main playable characters are always the same. There's always there's always Reimu and Marisa, and then smatterings of other playable characters who jump in depending on this game or that game. But all the bosses and stuff are always unique, and there's always like 12 new characters in each game because everyone needs a sub-boss and everything like that. This is specifically the characters from Touhou 6, which is I would say probably the most popular one. It's the one that actually was the first bullet hell in the series. It's also the first one that I played, and it features its main character is Sakuya Izuyoi, who happens to be one of my top 2 favorite Touhous, along with Alice Murgatroyd. Sakuya is a maid who can stop time. She is like one half of a JoJo reference because she's the maid to a vampire named Remelia. Remelia does not stop time, but Sakuya does, and she, of course, like throws knives. That's like her main weapon. So she like is the maid of this castle that Remelia lives in, and she stops time and so that she can clean, because it's like infinite, and so the only way she can clean it is she stops time. Very funny. Anyway, this is a very, I would say, pretty traditional Metroidvania that plays pretty well, and I had a really good time with it. It's not terribly long. It took me about 10 or 11 hours. It has some amazing sprite work. Really, really beautiful game to look at. Really like clean, simplified, sort of like chibi appealing graphics, and Really nice music as well. A lot of Touhou remixes, of course, because I feel like Touhou music remixes are an integral part of the brand at this point. As well as certain very clear homages. It'll be like a Touhou song, and then you'll hear a song from like Symphony of the Night come in. And you're like, oh, okay. It's very Symphony of the Night like in many, many ways. Like Sakuya literally has... She has Alucard's like run animation. And the little back step that he does, she has that exact... Like when you... when you're going one direction and then you tap to the other direction and Alucard kind of like whooshes backwards and then turns around. She does that exact same thing. It's pretty fun. The main mechanic is so it's this basic template of the sort of Metroid style structure where I call it the leapfrog structure, where you're exploring, you come to a door you can't open. And then, so you have to go to another door, and you do a whole section there, and then you find a key, and the key leads back to the door. You leapfrog back. You leapfrog over, and then you leapfrog back. That's just what makes sense in my head, so that's what I call it. Which I find fun. I get very sucked into these games, just because I haven't played too many of them, but I get very sucked into them just because that structure is very engrossing to me. Because it's this very consistent... There's not a lot of natural stopping points, because whenever you get something or finish something, there's always... You usually have like oh, now I can go here. Now I can go here. There's never a point where, okay, now I'm going to see new stuff. Now I'm going to go to a brand new... part of the game that I haven't seen before. It's always I guess hang on, I can phrase that better. You know, when you're playing like a level based game and you finish the level and you're like, all right, that's a stopping point. I feel like a lot of Metroid games don't have that because the maps are designed to be so interconnected, so you always kind of know what you're going to do next for the most part, or you can kind of figure it out. The main mechanic that's cool about this game is the time manipulation stuff. So you can slow time and then also completely stop it. You have a mana bar, an MP gauge, and that determines how many knives you can throw. As you attack, every attack uses up MP. It regenerates slowly over time. And then you can also spend MP on a bunch of different other abilities, like, very just special tools and weapons that you get. Your time slowing move. And then you have a separate gauge, it's called the time gauge, which is for stopping it entirely. And the time gauge leads to some pretty interesting... There's some cool puzzle stuff in this game. So the main... There's a bunch of things that get affected when time stops. For instance, like an early one that you'll run into is water. Water will no longer flow. So you'll reach this place where... You'll reach a room where there is a body of water. And on the other side of the body of water is a ledge that is too high up for you to jump out of the water and reach. However, if you stop time, you can run across the water's surface, and then that'll be high enough for you to actually jump up to that ledge on the other end. So stuff like that. Then you start running into things like, oh, but there's also a waterfall in the middle, and so you need to like move a platform. There's like a moving platform, and you have to stop time when the platform is like halfway across the water. Oh yeah, because they started introducing stuff where it's like, okay, certain things will stuff with like a purple outline continues to move. It's not affected by stop time. Things with a green outline only start moving in the stop time. So it's like, here's a green platform, and you have to stop time, and it carries you across, except, there's a waterfall in the middle, and that's essentially a wall. So you have to let the platform pass partially through the waterfall, unfreeze time, walk through the waterfall to the other side, and then freeze time again. It plays into the combat in a fun way, because when you are in the frozen time, all of your attacks consume the time gauge, which ticks down continuously as it's frozen. So you can do some JoJo shit where you like freeze time and then throw a bunch of knives and unfreeze time and they all shoot into the enemy and stuff. It's very fun. There's also a grazing mechanic, which I thought was cute. If you don't know, grazing is a mechanic that appears in, I believe, every single Touhou game, at least the bullet hells, which is essentially based on the idea that when you watch a bullet hell and you're like, how do they dodge all that? One of the reasons is that the actual hitbox of the character is actually much, much smaller than the sprite. So, in a Touhou game, it'll just be like a little part of the character's midsection will be the actual hitbox. So grazing is a mechanic where the bullet will pass through the sprite without hitting you, of course. And in the Touhou games, grazing always does something different. It's usually at least some kind of score multiplier. Sometimes there's mechanics tied into it, like, there's one, I think Touhou 8 or 9 or one of them. It has like a time advancing mechanic where every stage you play advances the game's clock by like an hour, and you have to beat the game within a certain time limit on the in-game clock and stuff. But if you get enough graze points, it'll only advance by 30 minutes and stuff like. So it's kind of like it's a part of the game that shows up a lot. And it's sort of like, it's a very bullet hell like challenge thing, because when you want to take your gameplay to the next level and get really high scores, you start going for higher graze points, because it's usually a multiplier. So a lot of Touhou games in different genres tend to adapt the grazing mechanic with different ways. Like the Touhou fighting game, one of the Touhou fighting games, because there's several, Hiso Tensoku has a pretty cool integration of it. I don't want to get like too bogged down in talking about it, but in this game, it's very similar, where the Sakuya's actual hitbox is quite a bit smaller than you would expect based on the sprite. And if you touch a projectile or an enemy, it doesn't have to be a projectile, without getting hit by it, if you graze it, it gives you back health, mana, and your time gauge. But if the time stop is in effect, it'll only return a little bit of time gauge and MP and not health. So there's kind of this cool sort of twist to the game, where a lot of attacks are hard to dodge, but you essentially gain health back. There's like a risk-reward thing. You can gain a bunch of resources back by getting closer to the danger, and also most of the bosses have attacks that are kind of designed to essentially be like refreshes on your resources and stuff like that. Because you'll burn through a lot of MP, like just spamming knives and stuff like that. There is a super integral special weapon you get, which is just throw 1,000,000 knives, and it like auto targets. And and while you're throwing them, you'll just auto graze through everything. That's really important. It does technically make the game like a lot easier, but you need it. You do need it. The game is very hard to complete without, if you're ever going to use it. So that's why you should explore. One thing that I've never quite cared much for in these games is the RPG elements. I usually find them to be a little bit superfluous. I understand the purpose of them is like to give you a sense of progression over the course of the game, but I feel like it's kind of unnecessary because the way that these games are designed, the exploration to me is the sense of progression and the items that you get. And I feel like attaching like a, oh, you leveled up number to it is kind of unnecessary. And if it's done poorly, I can see it being kind of a burden. Like, I really do not want to friggin' grind in one of these games because I'm under-leveled for a boss. So I am begrudgingly okay with it if it's balanced in such a way where I don't really have to grind. Thankfully, Luna Nights was. I think there was like 2 points where I grinded, but honestly, in retrospect, it might have just been, I don't think the getting like 1 or 2 extra levels was that useful. It was more so that I was just bad at, I didn't really have a good strategy for those boss fights. So I don't mind it too much in this instance, although I do think that you could take it out. There's a sort of weird shop system where so when you kill enemies, you get these gems, and you would think that the gems are the currency, but no. You go to Nitori, who's like a little inventor Kappa girl from the Touhou series, and you have to sell her the gems to get gold, and then use the gold to buy items. It's very weird, and again, kind of superfluous. I don't know why she couldn't just accept the gems. Because there's like, all the gems are worth, there's a bunch of different gems, and they're all worth different amounts of gold when you sell them back to her. I don't know why they couldn't have just been like automatically done the conversion. It's just like a weird kind of unnecessary extra step to buying stuff that, oh, I have to also sell my gems. And what's super weird is that they let you sell the gems individually, like each different type of gem individually, but they also have an option to just sell all of them at once, and I don't know why you would ever not do that. I don't get it. Doesn't really hurt the game. Just weird. Just a weird observation. But in general, Luna Nights is very fun. Again, like once you get to a certain, it's funny because like I felt like the power that I was getting didn't really have that much to do with my level. I'm sure it did to some extent, but it was more just like, oh cool, I feel like I have a bunch of useful tools because all the special items that you get and the upgrades to like how long you can stop time and how much MP you have. You get like certain special abilities like a dash and stuff like that, are really cool. And they make you feel more powerful just by giving you new options and more powerful ways to fight enemies. So that feels good. Again, just like certain superfluous systems around it that feel like they maybe could have been taken out. But I enjoyed it. I had a good time with Luna Nights. I would recommend it. It's on sale right now for like $11. So, seems like a good deal. What else have they made? They've made a couple games since then. Record of Lodos War. Huh. Okay. I guess they made another Metroid-vania in this style. That's cool. Also, again, to reiterate, gorgeous pixel art. Like, incredible looking game. And they made like a shmup. That's cool. Called Drainus. Drainus my anus. Ooh. Maybe don't. Maybe don't do that one. Anyway, yeah, Luna Nights, check it out.